Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we are talking about Metroid Prime 4 and how I think there is this possibility that this game that we've been waiting for news on for such a long time may be a key part to Nintendo's marketing plan when it comes to the Switch 2, the next generation successor to the Switch, which we presume is coming out in the year of 2024 as more and more evidence seems to be suggesting. And this may also in part explain why Metroid Prime 4 has been such a mystery while we haven't been told much about this game, because it's been saved for this time, the lead up to Nintendo Switch 2. So what am I getting at exactly? Well, let's talk about it. But before we do, let me point out that we are aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers. So if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leaving a like is also super helpful. And enjoy the ride as we talk about Nintendo every day. So I don't want to spend too much time on different things we've been discussing already. We already have a variety of videos discussing the different topics centered around Metroid Prime 4, but I will point out the recently discovered job listings that suggest that Metroid Prime 4 has been in the QA testing stage since early last year, which puts it in a similar scenario to Tears of the Kingdom, which was basically complete early the year prior to when it released. So we heard about it, the game being done March of 2022, and it released May of 2023. We're hearing about Metroid Prime 4 being in the QA testing stage March of 2023, and now we're already in the beginning of 2024, and there is a growing belief that Prime 4 will release this year. We don't know that for a fact, but it does offer up a lot of us some optimism that it can happen. Going beyond that, we have continually heard about different hirings for Retro Studios, a lot of which have been Western developers, a lot of those developers being developers of first-person games, many of which being games that involve shooting and online play. So I think these are important factors to keep in mind when it comes to this discussion about Metroid Prime 4 being key to Nintendo's marketing for Switch 2. Now, what's led to this discussion is a rumor that surfaced a few days ago. And this is coming from Nash Weedle, someone who has a history of telling us about Metroid things before they've been announced, Metroid Dread. But it should be noted that not everything that Nash Weedle has spoken of has been confirmed yet, but also some things have been confirmed, and nothing they said has been proven wrong yet. So I think they're definitely worth discussing when it comes to possibilities here. And on the 25th, just 3 days ago, this is what they said. I'm reading the Google translation. It seems a large part of the Switch 2 marketing campaign is to emphasize from the beginning, and in a very persistent way, how your games will look on the new console. They will give importance to the user's catalog, which jumps generations and elevates their experience. Now, my interpretation of this, especially considering other things they've discussed, is that they're not only talking about the Switch 2 being a vastly more powerful console that can demonstrate visuals that are much better than the Switch, but also that the user's catalog, in other words, your current lineup of games, will have an elevated experience on the Switch 2. So I think this is a multifaceted point here, and it even could be a hint towards what the big draw of the Switch 2 is. It may be the case that Nintendo isn't trying to market some sort of wacky little gimmick that they're going to tout changes the gameplay experience forever, like shoulder buttons that scroll, or having 2 infrared sensors instead of 1. And I'm not saying little things like that can't exist, but the key part to Nintendo's marketing may indeed be a part of simply the evolution that Switch 2 will offer for your games. And so if it's going to be the case that you may be able to take something like Mario Odyssey that has a dynamic resolution, meaning the resolution goes up and down depending on the situation, and then on Switch 2, it runs at a stable 900p, that could be pretty exciting. Or if you get a game like Hyrule Warriors that has a choppy frame rate, and all of a sudden on Switch 2 it has a stable frame rate. And maybe even it'll be the case that there'll be a variety of games that have enhancements beyond that. We've seen a variety of signs suggesting that Switch 2 will be able to do a lot of fantastic things to improve our games, like using DLSS to improve the resolution, the frame rate, and even offer an advanced form of ray tracing, which is a simulation of real-world lighting effects, which basically makes games look fantastic. And we've even seen some evidence of HDR support as well, high dynamic range. So offering all these extra improvements to existing games could make them look vastly better. So what does this have to do with Metroid Prime 4? Well, obviously Nintendo's been very quiet about this game. They haven't shown us anything, but I don't think that should be a reason for concern. When they showed off Metroid Dread back in 2021, they suggested the development is still going well. The game hasn't been cancelled, it's still been listed for Switch all this time. And as I said earlier, we now have evidence that strongly supports that Metroid Prime 4 has been the quality testing stage since early last year, which is a really good thing. That bodes extremely well for it to be nearing completion, not being in a position where they're going to need to cancel it or anything like that, and that we're likely going to see it very soon. But it's been the belief of many that the reason Nintendo has chosen not to show Metroid Prime 4 yet to any real capacity is because they don't want to reveal it until it's nearing a certain point in time for them. That point in time being the release for the Nintendo Switch 2. It was peculiar that they didn't mention Metroid Prime 4 when they shall drop Metroid Prime Remastered last year, and this could all be related. But what this situation seems to remind a lot of us of are the situations we were in for both Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild. Games that we, the core Nintendo fan base, have been long anticipating for years, waiting for significant updates on, but these games, when they're actually nearing completion, are so close to the beginning of a new generation that Nintendo decides it makes the most sense to have these be cross-generation titles. And so Metroid Prime 4 seems to be in that similar boat here. We think it's going to be a cross-generation title. We don't know that for a fact, but if Switch 2 is coming out this year, and Prime 4 has yet to have been given a release date, it feels like a fairly safe assumption that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be made available around the time of Switch 2's release, if not afterwards. And so it might be a bit of a head-scratcher to have this game not take advantage of the Switch 2. Considering the game's been in development for this long, and they even had to restart the game, which is already a huge loss, they've put a lot of time and effort and money into this project. We've continually heard about Archer Studios hiring a lot of high-quality AAA talent. This isn't cheap. And going back to the development update back in January of 2019, putting out that dedicated update video about the delay, Nintendo's only ever done that besides Prime 4 for Zelda, which to me suggests that they have high expectations for this game. They even promised us that they want to deliver an experience that compares favorably to Metroid Prime, one of the highest rated games of all time. So the expectations are high here, and I do think many of you will agree a cross-generation release makes a lot of sense. But when we also factor what we've heard from the Xbox Era podcast, that this game apparently looks visually unbelievable and has large areas similar to Halo Infinite, not necessarily open world, but the point being is that the game looks incredible and it has awe-inspiring environments. It just seems to make the most logical amount of sense to think that they may want to showcase this game in the best way possible. And so I don't necessarily think that means that Metroid Prime 4 will have to be saved for the Switch 2 announcement, but I do think it means that Metroid Prime 4 will be shown leading up to the Switch 2 announcement. So, for example, say we get the February Direct, as we were expecting, and in this Direct, as the final big reveal, they showcase Metroid Prime 4. But the way they show Metroid Prime 4 is not in a way that's super revealing of the gameplay, maybe something like that initial Tears of the Kingdom trailer that looked amazing, but also wasn't necessarily gameplay, and it just kind of whet our appetite, and it got us excited. They could do that for Metroid Prime 4 and just say 2024, and then perhaps a month or two later, we get that initial Switch 2 teaser that chases a few different games, including Metroid Prime 4, and then maybe by this June, we have a massive presentation showcasing the variety of games and features of the Switch 2, and it's there that they confirm that Metroid Prime 4 is indeed a cross-generation title. But the reason why I think this may be a big deal, if this is to be the case, is that if a big part of Nintendo's marketing for Switch 2 is this idea of playing with more power, of enhancing the experience, then Prime 4 as a cross-generation title is the ideal game to showcase for this. I fully expect that Metroid Prime 4 will still come out for Nintendo Switch. Looking at how impressive the Prime Remastered game is, they definitely can get a very impressive version running and looking on Switch, but showing the leap from Switch to Switch 2 with Metroid Prime 4, which will be the best comparison because it'll be a cross-generation title with versions made for both, I think that'll say a lot. If the Switch version of the game already looks pretty good, but then the Switch 2 version has better draw distance, less pop-in, HDR, 4K, or at least a higher resolution, maybe at least 1440p, and ray tracing, all of those things are going to help the game look vastly better. And while I expect the game to be 60 frames per second on both systems because that is the standard for Metroid Prime, I think it should be mentioned that there is this expectation that loading games will be far faster on Switch 2. When we got the reports of the tech demos that were meant to showcase the abilities of what Switch 2 could hypothetically be, there was a Breath of the Wild tech demo that apparently had basically instant loading. And so maybe this is something else they showcase on Switch 2, including Metroid Prime 4. Perhaps they'll introduce fast traveling in a Metroid Prime game, which would be a big deal, and they'll show that it'll be instantaneous. And that's important for gameplay. It will greatly help to maintain immersion, which is not just important for games, but especially with the Metroid Prime games where they focus on immersion, really drawing you in, making you feel like you are the character, exploring the world of Metroid. And to be clear here, because I do think some people may misconstrue what I'm trying to say here, I do believe 3D Mario is going to be the game that draws in the most attention. The other day on Nintendo Prime's podcast, we were having a debate, and an argument that was brought up, in an effort to argue that perhaps Switch 2 is not that close, is that we don't have a big game that Nintendo has been marketing in the lead up to Switch 2. Kind of like how we had Breath of the Wild that was being marketed in the lead up to Switch. But I think you could make an argument for Metroid Prime 4, but that's not the argument I made. I made the argument that there actually has been a huge game that Nintendo has been passively marketing, or aggressively marketing depending on how you look at it, for a good while. And that is the next 3D Mario. I think with all these other small Mario titles we've been seeing, and all of them getting this boost by the Mario movie, I think that has something to do with it. I think the Mario movie itself, especially with that initial poster they posted, that really gave the sense of this huge, massive adventure in this incredibly realized Mushroom Kingdom world, it got me thinking about a game, and I don't think I'm the only one. And so I do think that 3D Mario is also going to play a huge part to the Switch 2's marketing. But I also don't think 3D Mario is going to have a version available on Switch. Metroid Prime 4 will. And so seeing that difference, I think is going to be key to showing off the Switch 2 experience. Seeing how much better Switch games look and run on the system. And seeing how vastly different games compare. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to play a vital role to that. Which does also suggest that we may be seeing the game soon, if Switch 2 is coming out soon. Now, something else I wanted to briefly speak on in regards to Metroid Prime 4 is this possibility that maybe the game does have online multiplayer. And as a big Metroid fan that plays it for the single player experiences that are highly catered and highly polished, I definitely don't want a multiplayer to take away from an amazing masterpiece of a single player campaign. Whenever I get a big Legend of Zelda game or a big Mario game, I'm not expecting any online multiplayer for those, so I wouldn't necessarily expect it for Metroid. However, Metroid has a history of having multiplayer. Metroid Prime Hunters, an online multiplayer game. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, a local multiplayer game. And as I brought up in the beginning of this video, Retro Studios has hired a lot of talent that has worked on a lot of shooters that had significant online multiplayer modes, some of those being the primary parts to the game. We've also touched on how Nintendo has invested a lot into this game, and a lot of time as well, and so I do think they want this game to perform well. I think Metroid Prime 4 is going to be the best selling Metroid game to date, which would be just somewhere above 3 million, but I think if Metroid Prime 4 is going to be key to Nintendo Switch 2's marketing, if it's going to be made available early on in the system's life cycle, and it's going to be this amazing experience that really evolves the series, if they were to somehow also include multiplayer as well, That could help to lengthen the lifespan of this game in terms of its relevance and its evergreen status, continually selling for years to come. This would also help to differentiate Metroid Prime 4 further from 3D Mario if they're both expected to be coming out in the second half of this year. One being a single-player, massive platforming experience, while another has an incredible single-player shooting immersive experience that draws you in and is atmospheric, but is also a first-person online multiplayer shooter from Nintendo. We don't really have that right now. We just have Splatoon, where you shoot ink in third person, and so it's pretty different. If it's to be believed that the Switch 2 is going to have strong third-party support where there will be a lot of games like your NBA 2Ks and your Call of Duties, perhaps Nintendo having a game like Metroid Prime 4 that could have this online shooting experience that comes alongside an incredible masterpiece of a single-player experience, that will bode well to marketing the Switch 2 as a console for an audience that would be interested in that. Further supporting the idea of how Metroid Prime 4 could be key to Switch 2's marketing. But we shall see. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care.